the Prime Minister of Israel, was able to make time to be on camera commenting on the 9/11 attacks as it happened. The biggest threat to national security is the national security itself.
Disruptive.
Weird thing to happen. The big news of the day, obviously, is right now, Israel strikes Iran's nuclear sites and kills top generals. Iran retaliates with missile barrages. What it should be saying, what this headline should be saying, is that Israel attacks Iran, attacking nuclear sites as planned, as per caused, in coordination with Israel and the United States. That's what it should be saying. That this is not spontaneous. This is not a spontaneous attack. So, from the AP, it says, Israel launched ballistic attacks on the heart of Iran's nuclear and military structure Friday, deploying warplanes and drones previously smuggled into the country to assault key facilities and kill top generals and scientists. Israel asserted the barrage was necessary before its adversary got any closer to building an atomic weapon, although experts and the U.S. government have assessed that Iran was actively working on such a weapon before the strikes. Getting a weird case of deja vu right now. Wonder why that is. Iran retaliated by firing waves of ballistic missiles on Israel, where explosive flared in the skies over Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and shook the buildings below. The Israeli military urged civilians already rattled by the earlier wave of missiles to head into shelter as missiles damaged homes and killed 2 people. So you've seen all the news coverage. You've seen all the footages that cable news is plastering you with and fear-mongering, saying, oh my God, how could this happen? How can this happen? Well, it's not really a surprise if you know about stuff like this. And why I said that it feels like a bit of a deja vu is because I remember this guy here, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Wesley Clark, on how the United States planned to take out 7 countries in 5 years. So if you remember, Wesley Clark read out a laundry list of the U.S. military, NATO alliances, and military-industrial complex came together and said we were going to take out these 7 countries in 5 years, post 9/11. That they already had this in the books. They've already had this in the books that they needed something to go after Iraq, Afghanistan. Well, let's listen to what he says here.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld, and one of the generals called me in. He said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second. I said, well, you're too busy. He said, no. He says, we've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq. Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. I said, is it classified?
So that's the laundry list of the U.S. military saying that we are going to attack all these 7 nations. And tragically enough, they've already done the 6. They attacked Iraq. They went in Afghanistan for 20 years. They've already pummeled Syria and toppled it and installed a Al-Qaeda terrorist as their new supreme leader. They've already took down Gaddafi and turned Libya, which was the Beverly Hills of the Middle East, turned that upside down into a terrorist sleeper cell slave dungeon. They've already done all this. And now comes Iran. They didn't get to do it in 5 years, but now they have an excuse Now they have an excuse to do preemptive attacks on Iran. And this is why I said feels like a deja vu, because this was already mentioned numerous times years ago. And while the mainstream media wants to spook you and fearmonger and tell you, oh, how spontaneous this is, that Israel and Iran are attacking each other, this is already cooked in the books. This is already cooked in the books. For many, many years, many administrations have determined that they were going to find a way to pursue an attack on Iran. And now they're doing it on the behest of Israel. They're doing it on the behest of Israel. Israel's getting the green light to attack Iran. And America, even though they have told you this, even though Wesley Clark and many other people have told you that the United States is interested in attacking Iran, they're trying to wipe their hands off this. They're trying to wipe their hands and say, no, we didn't have any intention for this. This is all Israel's fault. This is all Netanyahu. I don't want to get myself involved with this. It's been from the get-go that they've wanted to do this. From the get-go, they've wanted to do this. So here's former retired Colonel Douglas McGregor to bring some insight to this. He says, in the last 72 hours, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Iran when negotiations between Washington and Tehran were still ongoing. Iran was caught off guard, but Iran recovered more quickly from its Pearl Harbor moment than Israel expected. In less than 18 hours after Israel's surprise attack, Iran responded, firing hundreds of ballistic missiles, including hypersonic missiles, into central Tel Aviv and across Israel. Meanwhile, Israel's Iron Dome failed, Israeli intelligence failed. Now Netanyahu is pleading with Washington to intervene with American military power to rescue Israel from certain defeat. So what that means is Netanyahu is begging and possibly blackmailing the Trump administration to bring troops to Iran to initiate World War III. That's what this is saying. Netanyahu sparked a war with Iran, was told to never touch Iran. There's been many warnings. He did it anyway. Now he's jumped ship, gone to the United States, and is demanding the United States gets their troops involved in this war. And I'm sure he's going to do the same with all the other allied nations. He's going to beg. And if he can't get what he wants, he's going to blackmail, he's going to deceive, because that is how the operation of Israel works with its allied nations. Do you think we're allies because we give a damn about the people there? Are we allies because of business? No, we're allies because Israel is basically a military base. And they have certain quotel on all their allied nations. And they're blackmailing, they're deceiving, they're bribing, they're lobbying, all these different governments around the world to allow for this to happen. And now that Netanyahu's got himself in further hot water, he's now begging his good buddy Trump to bail him out, to get the U.S. military involved in this situation. A defeat Netanyahu crafted with encouragement from Washington. At the same time, Russia, China, Pakistan, and most of the Muslim world are rallying to Iran's defense. Supplies, equipment, and technical assistance are pouring into Iran. It's time for a reality check. Washington burned through $12 trillion in the Middle East since 2003. Result? 7,000 dead Americans, 50,000 wounded, open borders, and 100,000 Americans dying yearly from fentanyl poisoning. Today, the United States is $37 trillion in debt, a sum that does not even include so-called agency debt. 77 million Americans voted for President Trump because he promised to end the overseas conflicts and halt the march into World War III. That was Trump's campaign promise right there. Trump went on to rallies. Trump went on to talk shows. He had that town hall with CNN. He said he was going to wrap up the Ukraine-Russia war in 24 hours. He said he was going to stop the dying of what's happening in Gaza. He said he was going to stop all this. And what we know now, and what we should have known the whole entire time, even though we gave Trump credit for certain actions, Trump was siding with the same military-industrial complex that the Democrats and the rest of the Republicans were going to do anyway, because that's who controls the show. That's who really runs things. It's not Trump. It's not MAGA. It's the deep state. And Trump is a formation of the deep state. Trump is not the wrench that's going to clog the machine and hopes to bring America back to its golden age. Trump is part of the deep state, which is why this is happening. Trump was not going to end those wars because Trump had the deep state, the military-industrial complex, and Israel talking through his ear, coaching in and directing him on where to put America on this global scale. You had blank checks coming from Miriam Adelson, the widow of Sheldon Adelson, during Trump's campaign. And that's when Trump announced it's no longer America first, it's Israel first. So, congratulations. Trump is not going to be your savior. Trump is not going to be your savior. And I hope people sink this in the same way people sunk in the fact that Bernie Sanders sold you out, the same way that Barack Obama sold you out, the same way that the entire system has sold you out. And that's why I've been saying, that's why I consider myself a post-duopolist populist, is because I'm not pitching for whatever team I favor, whatever team. I give credit where credit's due, but at the same time, I'm against the entire system because the entire system corrodes these parties. They were going to lead us to World War III no matter what. Even if Kamala Harris right now, if Cackle Mom Harris was taking control right now, we'd be even further in World War III. So Trump's mandate is unchanged. Secure America's borders, ports and coastal waters, deport illegal aliens, crush the criminals raping and murdering Americans, restore the rule of law, but not one more drop of American blood on foreign wars. One Israeli strike in Karg Island, where 90% of Iran's oil exports flow, or Bandar Abbas terminals, and Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. That's 20% of global oil supply. So I was under the assumption that this was all because Iran has nuclear weapons. I was under the assumption that Iran, we got to take them down because they were manufacturing these supersonic nuclear weapons, these missiles that might do huge damage to neighboring countries, and we got to stop their nuclear program. Oh, wait. It was never about the nuclear program. In fact, Iran does not have nuclear weapons. And this reveals the true game. Just like Afghanistan, just like Iraq, just like Syria, just like Libya, just like 99.9% of the wars. There's always more to the story than what you're being told. And this is it. You now have Israel purposely attacking oil fields, their largest export, which it means, and Douglas McGregor puts it, that means disrupted supply chains and a runaway inflation. Gas hits $7 a gallon overnight. Every working family crushed. Truckers can't deliver food. Economy crashes. For what? So Israel, that started this insane war, can drag Americans into a wider regional conflict with the potential for nuclear war. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. So Trump, the anti-interventionist who campaigned saying he was going to stop the wars, was a flat-out lie. And sadly, I feel like people should have saw that. And look, I'm no fan of Trump. I know I gave credit where credit was due on Trump's administration. They were right about certain things. They were certainly better than some Democrats were. But I knew in the back of my mind that Trump was no different than any politician. Trump is no different than any other person in politics, in the White House. And I knew that Trump, in the back of his mind, yeah, he may want to blurt something out. Yes, he's a wild card. Yes, he says the right things. Broken clock is right twice a day. But I knew at the back of my mind that he is going to surround himself with the worst of the worst. And in 2016, when he ran for president, he surrounded himself with a bunch of neocons. He had John Bolton. He had, Gargamel, who was trying to destroy Latin America. That was all through his first Trump presidency, and people warned about him about that. And then when Joe Biden won in 2020, Trump had some time to reflect. He said he was going to change things around. People thought, hey, things are going to get better. They looked at the second administration. They saw RFK Jr., they saw Tulsi Gabbard, they saw Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. They thought things were going to get better. But then the true colors came out when Trump was doing rallies for the Adelsons, started doing rallies for Israel groups, for AIPAC, and even the people within Trump's administration. When you have Pete Hegseth, a former Fox News contributor, going back on Fox News, now as the Secretary of Defense, going on there and preaching to Fox News why we got to attack Iran, and giving a biblical sermon to the people at Fox News for this. This is how you know this administration is going to be deranged. That promises were not going to be kept. Promises were going to fail. And this idea that Trump was going to lead you out of war, it was an absolute lie. He used you to get your votes, and now people voted for this guy. They thought things are going to turn around, and here we are now. So what is MAGA going to say about Trump now? I know there's people out there that still want to have hope for Trump. They would still want to cross their fingers and say, well, maybe Trump can turn things around. Maybe he's just trolling people, and he's not 100% for Netanyahu. But we know Trump is as compromised as any other politician, which honestly makes me realize that's why they made him president. Because that always struggled me. Why a man who they hated so much, they did unlawful tactics and tried to take out twice. Why would they allow him to become president? Why would they not rig the election in 2024 and allow Donald Trump to be inaugurated? Why was that the case? Oh, because Donald Trump was going to sell you, as a businessman, he's going to sell you the idea of automation. He's going to sell you the idea of Palantir taking over, and he's going to sell you this. He's going to sell you the potential of World War III on behalf of Israel. That's what's happening, folks. So, Douglas McGregor comes back and says, we have 40,000 troops in UAE, Qatar, across the Persian Gulf. They are sitting ducks. Iranian Shahid 136 drones cost $20,000 each. American Patriot missiles cost $4 million per intercept. Do the math. We will run through our inventory of missiles and go broke while Americans come home in boxes. The Middle East is on the brink. Here's what Washington must do to defuse the conflict. Number 1, ask for an emergency UN Security Council meeting. Ask for an immediate ceasefire, making it clear that Washington opposes the destruction of Iran, Israel, and any other state in the Middle East. Number 2, demand that Israel stop the killing of Palestinians in Gaza and withdraw its forces from Gaza and the West Bank. Third, suspend all military aid to Israel until Israel agrees to remove its troops from Gaza and permit humanitarian assistance to reach the people of Gaza. 4, propose the commitment of armed forces from non-aligned nations to police Gaza and the West Bank. And finally, number 5, proposed that the United States, Russia, China, India, and Brazil convene a peace conference to arbitrate the dispute between Israel, Iran, and Israel's neighbors. So that is former Colonel Douglas McGregor laying out a kind of basic strategic plan on possible de-escalation. Do you think the Trump administration is going to consider these options? I hardly doubt that. Because look at the buildup. Look at how many times you saw Pete Hegseth or Stephen Miller or anybody else, even Kash Patel, even Dan Bongino. They are servants to Israel. They are servants to the Zionist cult. And that's why they're in the position that they are right now. Even Tulsi Gabbard, who I once considered an anti-interventionist, once considered one of the good people inside this swamp. Even Tulsi Gabbard, to some degree, has her moments. She's showing her two-face. She's showing her side of being deeply inside, entrenched in the swamp, while pretending to masquerade herself as the still anti-interventionist that she once was. This is how you're being duped. This is how you're being played. And it's leading up to World War III. And what makes this more interesting is while the news media continues to peddle this as some sort of shock and awe, and oh my God, we can't believe this happened. Here's a montage of news coverage from over 20 years, 2 decades, that they have used the rhetoric of Iran having nuclear weapons, which it doesn't, using that rhetoric for 20 straight years to coordinate efforts, just like Wesley Clark said, they've wanted to attack Iran. They needed some sort of strategy. This is the narrative that they went with. And now because Israel is attacking Iran, now they want to follow suit. Now that they can say, oh, it's not Americans that want to attack Iran, it's Israel. And since Israel's our ally, we have to do it. We have to comply. You're not anti-Semitic, are you? But here's a look at 20 years of the same rhetoric, the same fear-mongering propaganda that you've heard constantly. And you tell me if it seems very familiar.
Take Iran about 12 months to enrich enough nuclear material for a single nuclear weapon.
United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is warning that Iran is potentially just months away or less from nuclear breakpoint.
Iran is 2 months away from a nuclear weapon, and it's a victory to get them 1 year away?
Iran could be less than a month away from building a nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu has made 2 tough-talking TV appearances, saying that Iran is just months away from making a nuclear bomb.
What is important to understand is that you have to dismantle the entire terror empire.
Oh, look at that. Look at that surprise. Right on the day, 9/11. Surprise, surprise. Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu makes an appearance on American media. Isn't that kind of convenient? That the guy, the Prime Minister of Israel, was able to make time to be on camera commenting on the 9/11 attacks as it happened. Isn't it kind of interesting that Benjamin Netanyahu was prime minister on the day of 9/11 and October 7th, which they considered it's 9/11? Isn't that kind of interesting? He's like Mark Carney in that way. Oh, crisis is happening. I must serve. I must go in and be like Superman. I'm going to make things better. Trust me. I do constant warfare, attacking my own civilians. This guy is a monster. This guy is a legit monster. And not only is he a monster for his foreign affairs attacks on these regions, not only the heinous war crimes that he's committing, the crimes against humanity with other nations, but even the crimes within his own country. And let's not forget that before October 7th, people were lining up the streets of Israel for this man's arrest. There was criminal convictions for Benjamin Netanyahu within his own government, within his own country, days prior to October 7th. Israel was flooded with people supporting the arrest and locking up this man. And then, out of convenience, that was the day a music festival happened right next to a concentration camp, and all of a sudden, oopsie daisy, the Iron Dome got exposed. Oh my God, Hamas came in with F-150s and hand gliders and kidnapped people, considering it the 9/11 of that time. Don't you just love how all convenient this is? All manufactured this is. It's almost like they're playing a game. It's almost like they've had this all preempted up, all on blueprint, all discussed way before these events happen. Almost like they're false flags. But I'm not going to say anything further because, God forbid, we start reading into things or questioning things. Oh my God, I might be considered the worst bigot known to mankind. I might be considered an anti-Semite or anti-science or whatever else they try to smear you with. But that's over 2 decades. And there's even more of this. This is just the first 20 years of this rhetoric. This goes even back further when Benjamin Netanyahu told in the 80s that he had thoughts of attacking Iran, that we had to do preemptive attacks on Iran before Iran apparently attacked us, which it hasn't. There's nowhere throughout human history where there's been a direct attack on Israel or American soil before this by Iran. There has been absolutely none. So, here, I find this is interesting. So, this was a couple months ago, actually. WikiLeaks says U.S. intelligence assessed just weeks ago that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. Supreme Leader, how do you say that? Khamenei was not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. The IC is monitoring if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. And that's coming from Tulsi Gabbard. So Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, back in March 25th, 2025, announced directly in front of the people on national camera that Iran did not have any nuclear weapons whatsoever. This was months ago. And then all of a sudden, that was when more tensions from Israel were coming into America. That's when Bibi was trying to bribe Donald Trump. That's when back and forth, money exchange hands, information exchange hands. You get the picture. And now all of a sudden, oh my God, Iran is months away from building this imaginative super weapon. Just like Iraq with the weapons of mass destruction we still haven't found. There's always something to keep a war going. So here's Tulsi Gabbard saying this.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
So interesting. Iran doesn't have the capabilities to build this nuclear weapon, but yet it was capable enough to get attacks from Israel spontaneously out of nowhere because they're determined to build a super weapon with a matter of months. It just seems so chaotic to keep in control, and it's even more so worse because the people that are lying to you about this don't realize that people like us have the internet. People like us understand things. People like us can go back 20 years ago. Remember all the stories that they told you about Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction they never found, and come to the same conclusions of what's happening today, because all they're doing is rebooting the same narratives. Exact same narratives. It's like war Mad Libs. Just insert whatever country you want to attack, make up some conspiracy about it, and boom, scare people about it. Here's Sabby Sav saying, remember when they told you Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction to push for war in Iraq. Now the claim is Iran tried to assassinate Trump to push war with Iran. These wars are his wars that the U.S. fought. Don't fall for it. Yeah, remember they tried to blame Iran for the Trump assassination to push a war with Iran. Again, it's so crazy. It's so crazy that they think that people are just going to fall to this again. There are people that do fall to this again. But again, we have the internet. We're able to comprehend what happened 20 years ago. And for people that have been around for decades upon decades, you know how the United States, its military intelligence, the national security, all these people are notorious liars, and they've lied to you since Vietnam. They have lied to you since Vietnam. When has there ever been such a national security threat from places like Iraq and Afghanistan and Iran and all these other nations that ever came to be? We went to war with Iraq and Afghanistan in the United States for over 20 years. And what was the conclusion? Nothing. We tried to stop terrorism, and then 20 years later, we got the terrorists to take over Afghanistan. Why would we do something like that? Oh, because then we have an excuse to go back to Afghanistan. Now we can have an excuse to say, oh, we got to fight we got to fight the terrorists. We got to fight the Taliban. You know, the same Taliban that we enforced years ago. And let's not forget that terrorists from these Middle East regions came in part by the United States. That was revealed by Hillary Clinton. And speaking of the devil, Hillary Clinton, when she stated, this is back in 2008, she stated, I want the Iranians to know that if I were president, we will attack Iran. That was her statement in 2008 when she was running for president. I want the Iranians to know that if I were president, we will attack Iran. So don't think for a second that, oh, if Kamala Harris was in power right now, we wouldn't be in the struggle. No, Kamala Harris would have sold you out too. The Democrats would have done this. The Republicans would have done this. The entire system sold you out completely. The entire system is corroded by the military-industrial complex, and this is the garbage you get. This is the glunching monster, the bloodthirsty monsters that control and dominate over you every single day. And these are psychopaths. They will stop at nothing. They will stop at nothing and think this is somehow doing great work. This is going to secure you. This is going to make you happier. The biggest threat to national security is not Iran. The biggest threat to national security is the national security itself. That's the irony of this. That's the irony. The biggest threat to national security is your own government. The people responsible for establishing these wars. Because as Julian Assange told us, the point of these wars is to continue on wars. It's not to find solutions. It's not to find diplomatic ties with countries. No, it's to have continuous wars so that the military-industrial complex, the contractors, the financiers, the rich bankers, the oil tycoons, the natural resource enthusiasts can all profit from the death and destruction of humanity. That's the point of this. So, here's another reminder of how this just feels like 20 years ago. Remember when George W. Bush launched Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003? They have weapons of mass destruction. We must stop them. Sends Americans to die in the Middle East. And then a year later, as the bodies were returning back from the soldiers they deployed in Iraq, he laughs about it with the press. Jokes about never finding the WMDs. Do you understand yet? So here's to remind people of this.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there.
And that's a room full of journalists. That's a room full of journalists. Those aren't just neocons. Those aren't just people from Halliburton. Those are journalists. Those are people that are supposed to be holding this guy accountable, asking the question, where are the weapons of mass destruction? And here you have from CNN to Fox News to ABC, CBS, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, all the publications sitting in this room laughing hysterically at this notorious lie, this national lie, to convince people to go invade a country and sacrifice its own citizens for. They were laughing about this as people were coming back in coffins, as soldiers were sacrificing themselves overseas for nothing, other than capturing oil. That's the only reason we even looked at Iraq. And here's George W. Bush, the Texas Ranger, George W. Bush, laughing hysterically with the press about how hilarious it is that, oh, we made up this notorious lie for war. Oh, no weapons of mass destruction here. Oh, no, nothing over here. Where are they? How crazy that is. And now, here we are. Donald Trump embraces Israel after successful Iran attack. Did you see how things just never change? The more things change, the more they stay the same. Here's from The Economist, too. Now Trump is urged to go all in on crushing Iran. So Benjamin Netanyahu got his way and is trying to push Trump, levy Trump, knowing that Trump has been compromised by Israel, to advance this warfare. And I thought I'd leave it off with a funny meme to make a little bit of light to this. Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Iran has weapons of mass destruction. Hey, I've seen this one. So, once again, the war cycle still continues on. They're still lying to you. They're still manufacturing narratives. They're still fear-mongering people. And I hope that people are starting to wake up to this, if not have already waken up to this, because it's never going to end. It's never going to end. I hope people understand that electorally, this is not going to change. The military-industrial complex that Dwight D. Eisenhower warned you in 1961, this is what's happening. It has completely encapsulated both parties. And that's why I disagree with both parties. That's why I disagree with the system. And that's why people need to understand that you have to fight the entire establishment, not just the fraction of it. Not the fraction that you hate and support the fraction that you like. Stop being a tribalist bitch and realize that both sides are screwing you. And the greater power, the greater evil that's really controlling you is outside the White House, is greater and more essentially evil than what is being presented in the White House.